Guys, it's Sarah, and I'm back today with a day in the life of episode. And today I have the most exciting guest. Her name is Jo, short for Joanna, and she is from East Africa, from Tanzania, or at least that's where she's at right now. We're going to find out where she's from later. But Jo, thank you so much for joining this interview. I'm just absolutely ecstatic that you were willing to do this all the way from the Serengeti in Africa right now.
Yeah, my pleasure. I hope it will be good enough network so we can have a lovely chat as I'm sitting in the midst of the great migration, as you said, out in the Serengeti in Tanzania.
That is so incredibly awesome to hear that. And yes, I can hear birds in the background, so that's so cool. So, Jo, can you tell us a little bit about like how you, well, first of all, tell us what you do for work. And then if you could just go back a little bit and tell us like how you got to where you are today.
So yeah, always been a very horsey person. I grew up with horses. My parents were breeding ponies. I did a whole thing that most people do. I had my first Shetland pony when I was 4 years old. That became my best mate, and then upgraded to a Welsh pony that became my second best mate. So horses have always been a big part of my life. And being brought up in between Kenya and Sweden, I obviously also enjoy the bush, enjoy the wildlife, nature. So it really all started at a very early age in my life. And then I went down to South Africa to actually study field guiding, hotel and lodge management, and did quite a bit of riding out on the reserve, but I was busy studying. And I was about 19 years old at the time. And I believe that was probably the first time where I sort of realized that maybe this is something I could definitely do for a living. And then I went down to South Africa to study. So I studied field guiding, hotel and lodge management. And on the reserve where I was studying, there were some lovely sort of wild ponies roaming around that I got permission from the principal to ride. And I think that was really when the idea came up, where the seed was planted, that this is actually like something I could do for a living, being riding horses in and amongst wildlife out in the African bush. So that's how the sort of whole idea started with Kaskazi horse safaris.
Wow. Okay. So take us back to when you said you were raised in between Sweden and Kenya. Is one of your parents from Africa, or what's that part all about?
No, so both my parents are originally Swedish, but both of them had international jobs. So both of them were based in Kenya on and off for a couple of years. And we had family and friends living in Kenya as well. So therefore, we spent a lot of time in Kenya.
Wow.
However, I did my high school in Sweden. So at the age of 18, I left Sweden permanently to go down south to try to find my feet a little bit and work out what I actually wanted to do in life. So it sort of started more like a gap year when I went down to study in South Africa. And that's when obviously everything I did there just, I felt like a fish in water and never really left the industry. And that sort of led to what I eventually started about 5 years later after being done in South Africa, but obviously up here in Tanzania.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome. So most of your life, it sounds like you've spent in Africa. So you're very, very familiar with the bush and the culture, and you've been in different countries within Africa.
Yes, I'd like to say so. I obviously spent quite some time down in South Africa, but when I was down there, I always wanted to come back up to East Africa because East Africa was always home. So we actually decided to ride through Southern Africa all the way up to East Africa, and obviously went through all the lovely countries. I had never been to Tanzania before, funny enough, even though it's bordering onto Kenya. So on our overland trip, we drove through Tanzania and was meant to go up to Kenya and actually work for a lodge up there and set up some horse safaris up in Kenya. However, we came through Tanzania and absolutely fell in love with the country, its culture, its wildlife, the people especially. and got offered a really good job for a place where I was requested to set up horse safaris for a place here at the place called Manyara Ranch Conservancy. So I never made it up to Kenya. So literally as I drove through Tanzania, which is now I think a good 15, 16 years ago, I never left. And here I am now, 36-year-olds,
Wow.
15, 16 years later.
Oh my goodness. And then when you were saying that we did this, are you married, or was it just like you and your siblings, or who went with
Well,
you?
it was my current boyfriend at the time, who is today a very dear friend, but no longer my
Okay.
boyfriend. But I have my fiancé now, and I
Okay.
have my 2 boys. So I have created a little family for myself, alongside all my
Oh,
trusted
wow.
safari horses.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Okay, so then you landed in Tanzania 15, 16 years ago and loved it and wanted to stay. Was there already a safari, like horse by safari camp or situation set up there, or did you start this Kaskazi safaris?
So when I originally came up, I started working for this company that did not have any horses. It was a beautiful permanent camp on that had exclusivity to a big area. So I set up horse safaris for them there. However, it was center based. So after 2 years working there, I kind of wanted more. And I therefore approached my bosses at the time and said,
Mhm.
is there any chance that we can start doing mobile safaris? Doing sort of 1 night, 2 night flight camps out in the area where I was working at the time. Sadly, the bosses were not too keen on it because they thought the logistics, the risk of it was a bit too much for them. So then I tried to buy the sort of horse department out of the company, because obviously the horses, I had bought them, I had trained them, and they became beautiful safari ponies for me. But sadly, on paper, they were not mine. So I didn't want to leave them behind. So I tried my hardest to
Mm.
see if I could buy them with me and keep on running the show for them there. But at the same time, I had the flexibility and the freedom to do what I really wanted to do. And my dream was to be able to run my own mobile safaris across Tanzania. Sadly, they turned that down as well.
Yeah.
So obviously, at the time, I was
Mm.
young, I was fairly inexperienced. But what I did have was a big passion for the country and for horses. And there was no other company in Tanzania running mobile horse safaris. And that's why, obviously still very young, I had no choice but to open and set up Kaskazi horse safaris. So that's how Kaskazi horse safaris started. And that is about 10 years ago now, I believe. So again, I was woman, I was white, I was very young, inexperienced. So it's been a journey. I can tell you that it wasn't as smooth as it's sometimes run these days. But so yeah, it was a hell of a journey, but I don't regret any of it. I think if I would have been slightly more clever, maybe going to work for one of the big mobile operators out there, would have maybe been a better call at that time. But then obviously things would have looked very different for me, current time. And so I don't regret any of that. So here we are now, about 10 years later, down the line with Kaskazi, and we got managed to now, through the years that we've been pushing to get access into, really pristine, beautiful wildernesses like, the Ngorongoro, like the Serengeti. We run in the foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro. So so far so good. But we keep on working at it, because obviously it can never be perfect.
That's incredible. What a story. I am so impressed with you that you branched out and started from scratch on your own. You probably had to go buy more horses and then train them up yourself and then market this business. And did you have to buy some land also then, or were you able to like board the horses somewhere? Like how did you do all the
So
logistics?
we can you hear me? The way it started was that obviously I didn't have any funds really, or starting capital to get it all going. So literally what I did was I approached a few guests of mine that had been running with me at the previous company that I was working at, and said that I'm considering and setting something up. And I asked whether they were happy to be my guinea pigs on the first safaris. So I did ask them to put down a deposit,
Yes.
2 groups. And with that deposit money, I managed to buy myself some ponies. So went to the racetrack in Kenya, bought fresh race horses off the racetrack, all thoroughbreds. Maybe not perfectly suitable for the job, but I didn't have much option because in Tanzania it's not a very horsey country, so we're very limited with the horses we can get here. So anyway, with that money, managed to get them, and I put together a crew, and we went out into the bush about 6 months before the first group came through, and spent about 2 months out there and just trained the ponies, got them used to the bush, got them used to the picket line, and obviously did endless encounters with elephants, lions, buffaloes, giraffes, all the things that obviously can spook a safari pony out there. So we spent enough time out there to be sure that these horses were not going to bolt, when we came across an elephant bull charging us out there. So then the group came through. So in the beginning, obviously, we didn't have our tent, our own camp. We didn't have our own vehicles. We rented all of that. And then slowly but surely, by word of mouth, and obviously agents starting to use us, we managed to slowly buy our first truck, buy our first vehicle, buy one tent, buy two tents. And eventually, obviously, today we're sitting on a fleet of about 25 working safari horses. And we got 36 in the yard at home, stallions, babies, brood mares, and all of that. So it took a while to financially get it all going.
Wow.
But thanks to some very loyal guests that obviously are dear friends of ours today, they made it all very possible.
This is an incredible story. Sorry, the wind. The wind was really loud, so I had to stop.
It's the proper.
It's okay.
That's the wind out here for the moment because I'm sitting against the rock coffee behind me, so I'm a little bit sheltered here. But right in front of me is the big, vast, open Serengeti plains.
Awesome. That's so incredible. Here I thought I was interviewing a safari by horseback guide, but you're the inventor of the company, like the first one in Tanzania. And
Yes,
this is just blowing my mind, all the work you went through.
Yeah, like I said, it hasn't been an easy journey, and it doesn't continue to be an easy journey, but it obviously gets easier by the years when we start getting things working as we want it to work.
Definitely. So are you actually breeding thoroughbreds then now to keep your horses going, or have you brought in other breeds?
So we have actually quite a few purebred thoroughbreds left because we learned that obviously condition-wise, as they do a lot of big work out here in the bush, that thoroughbreds are a little bit difficult for that reason, even though they are lovely to ride and quite spirited. So now we got a mix of a lot of different crossbreeds, which I have found works the best. So we got Clydesdale crosses, we got Shire crosses, Boerbred crosses, Anglo-Arab crosses, thoroughbred crosses, Frisian crosses. So it's a wild mix. And everyone always asks me, as you can imagine, as far as what is the perfect safari pony. And the only answer I can give to that really is any crossbreeds is your best option. Any purebred is not necessarily going to be very good for you, but obviously the few exceptions. But crossbreeds works best for us out here. So we got a wild mix of ponies out here, which is lovely.
Gotcha. That's so cool. And so when you're saying crossbreed, you're talking about crossing a hot-blooded horse with a more mellow temperamented horse, right?
Yeah, because you still need to keep, because we do so many hours in the saddle for multiple days in a row, so we still need the steady heads, the good temperaments, but we mustn't lose the endurance, because very much what we do out here, if you were to compare it to anything else out there, really, is endurance riding. So roughly, depending obviously on days, depending on the riders in the group, but you're looking at in between, say, 30 to 50 kilometers a day on horseback. Moving days obviously a little bit more so, because you really got to get to camp, so slightly longer mornings. We do a midday break somewhere under a shady acacia out in the plains, and then the ride continues in the afternoon. So the endurance, stamina is very important with the horses as well. So that's why you can't really go too heavy, because then you lose that. Again, you go if you go too light, you also sort of lose the condition on the ponies a little bit, and you struggle to keep the ponies looking good out there. And with the world today, you got to make sure that the ponies look good, because otherwise they will think you are not feeding them well enough.
That's true. So how do you when you're going on these rides, do you have somebody ahead of you at the campsite that has already supplied the hay or, in the grain for the horses and had the water ready and the campsite set up? Or are you riding all day long with your clients and then get to the campsite and everyone else is relaxing while you're taking care of the setting up the tents?
No, we got a big crew. So even I can just speak what we're doing for the moment. So for the moment, we've got 8 guests in camp, and we've got an 8-day safari ahead of us. It started yesterday. And the crew, the back of house crew, we've got 3 chefs with us. We've got 5 tent stewards with us. We have 3 waiters with us. We have 3 drivers with us. We have 1 mechanic with us, and we got 4 horse grooms with us. So it's a big crew. So we are a little village that we sort of move around in the Serengeti. And obviously on the moving days is when the heavy part comes in. So you need some big, strong men. So the entire crew is men.
Yeah.
I'm being the only woman out here, but it's hard work, heavy lifting. So it's more, it's more of a man's job
Yeah.
than anything. So we got backup vehicles, we got backup trucks and everything. So literally on the moving day, we ride out in the morning. The whole
Good.
camp gets broken down by the crew. They get put into the lorry. They go ahead, and hopefully, if everything runs smooth, which it doesn't always do due to logistics, getting stuck in the mud or stuck in the sand or whatever it might be. But ideally is that by the time we get into the next campsite, everything should be ready, beautifully set up, identical to the previous camp, but obviously in a new, hopefully beautiful location. So in the middle of the day, we do sort of 2.5 to 3 hours break.
Wow.
Horses needs to break, the riders need to break, and it also gives the backup crew a chance to have camp ready for us as we hopefully ride in sort of as the sun sets in the evening. So it's a big
Oh my
logistic
goodness.
work behind it all, and that's also
Y-
why in the beginning it was difficult because
Yeah.
the crew wasn't really sure, about they didn't know how to break it quickly, set it quickly. We didn't have specific campsite, lunch site that
Mhm.
we would normally use, so it's all a learning curve as you come along. But now obviously the horses are veterans. We have a fantastic core crew, a very loyal people who knows their job, and all of a sudden things that are normally a serious struggle actually becomes fairly straightforward.
Okay, gotcha. And then do you have mapped out routes that you just kind of rotate in between all year round?
Sorry
Thank you
about
so
that.
much for being so patient.
No worries, Sarah. I know it. We're quite used
Oh,
to it
I'm
here.
sorry.
So what was your question?
Okay. So do you keep on going from
Oh,
on
right.
different routes all throughout the year just to keep it switched? Like do you have like 4 different routes that you just, you know, change up depending on
Um,
the time of year?
so the beauty of being a mobile operator is the flexibility that the moving days, we normally will brief the guest in the evening to say whether we're going to be northbound, southbound, westbound, or eastbound. So it's very much about following the game. And the time we're out in the Serengeti is very much about following the
Oh,
migration, as you can imagine. So, for example, what I'm seeing now, we have slight
okay.
movement of the migration going south. So tomorrow is a moving day, and we're going to be going south. So obviously, throughout the years, we have had many new campsites. So most of the campsites that we use these days, we have used before. It just makes life a little bit easier. But if it were to be that we have to go into an area where we haven't been before, then that's what we will do. And that is the beauty and why I very much enjoy the mobility and the flexibility because it allows us to make those last minute decisions. So to answer your question, like most of the
I am
campsites used in the past,
yeah.
but last safari, for example, we had a totally new campsite that we have never used, sort of thing. Um, and same thing with the Kilimanjaro ride that we do, the Kilimanjaro elephant ride. We have sort of we have a goal. We need to get up to the Kenyan border, and then sort of in between, we normally do 2 or 3 different campsites. Sometimes we use the same if it works perfectly with the weather, with the terrain, with the horses, with the game, and sometimes we have to, take a slight detour for various reasons.
Man, that's so incredible. So let's talk about the dangers. Obviously the horses are bomb proof, it sounds like, because of your training. Um, but what about the wildlife and the camping and the I don't just tell me about that part.
So yeah, like you said, obviously very important that your trusted steed out there knows his or her job, which anything we put a guest on, obviously are a good horse that knows their job. But again, a horse is always going to be a horse. It's not a motorbike
Hmm.
that has an on and off button. So they all come with their different heads. You know, they're all their own
Right.
individuals. Some of them are a bit more forward, some of them a bit more mellow. But again, we only cater for advanced riders. So for that reason, that it is a fast-paced safari. You're riding in uneven terrain. There's holes out there. There's dig by little honey badgers, aardvarks, hyenas. So you never know the terrain that you ride across, and also because we never really use the exact same paths or trails. So all of that needs to be taken into
Yeah.
consideration. In terms of the game, we're very lucky that where the horses are based at home, they are based within a wildlife estate. So, and also now because we've read quite a bit that the horses, they do see animals from the day they're born, and if we buy them, they get to spend some time at home at the farm where they have zebras, wildebeest, eland, antelopes, gazelles. They graze alongside one another all day long. Um, and in the beginning, it was
Nice.
challenging to obviously get the horses used to all these, what you would refer to as the dangerous game out there, being all your cats, elephants, buffaloes. Now it's much easier because we have veterans out there. So whenever we bring in a newbie, they come along for the first time loose as a horse on a safari, so they get to see their first animals with no riders on their back. And they obviously trust the veterans. So when they see the veteran
Good.
horses happily graze when we have an elephant, a herd of elephants um, browsing in front of us, they see that the other horses don't really react, and that way our veteran horses literally trains the youngsters. And normally one or two safaris running free or running loose, they're pretty ready to go, to be honest, thanks to our veteran horses. But with the game in general, obviously it's very good that you have good knowledgeable guides out there that understand the behavior of animals. You know how to read them, you know what signs to look for if there might be a charge coming up. Horses obviously learns this very well as well.
Yeah.
So very often in my briefing, I tell the guests that try to do very little to your pony because he knows his job. And very often, if we're close up to elephants, for example, then obviously make sure you keep your keep your feet in the stirrups and your hands on the reins. So if the horse does a quick 180 turn because maybe there's a charge coming, that they're all ready for it. So wildlife, to be perfectly honest, obviously there
Yeah.
is always going to be sometimes as you spend a lot of hours out in the saddle there, there's been a few hairy moments, but knock on wood, nothing bad. And as a guide, you just got to be able to read those situations well. So that's obviously very much up to me, and find a fine balance out there where you obviously want to give the guest a fantastic ride, an adrenaline filled ride, but still being able to keep it safe. So there's a very fine balance there for a guide to make sure that everyone is well enough entertained, but not feeling scared or worried out there that it's not, something safe to do. But again, saying that, a lot of people ask me, is it safe to
Yeah.
ride in and amongst African wildlife? And I said, you are riding across open, wild, uh, untested terrain in and amongst African wildlife. So obviously, that comes with the risk. I would lie if I said anything different. But normally, my answer is that I've done this myself for 15 years, so and I'm still kicking. So that should be their answer. But really, to be honest, the biggest enemies out there that normally ends up with a bit of a fall or whatever, a bit of a bruise, is holes in the ground. Those are our biggest enemies, especially when you pick up the pace a little bit out on the open
Yeah.
plains, which is beautiful, and then amongst the migration or alongside a journey of giraffes or whatever might be, whatever the day might have up for you. And then thorn bushes. Every tree, pretty much where we are, has thorns, and not all people are used to that. So thorn bushes,
Oh,
holes are the biggest challenges, and wildlife pretty much. If you approach them well and if you treat them well, and not push your luck there, you have beautiful, lovely, safe, uh, close-up encounters with them.
wow. That's so cool. Um, so what about the river crossings? I've seen a few video clips where, the whole party's crossing a river, and I'm thinking, what about the hippopotamus and what about the crocodiles?
So we have a few crossings, but we actually don't have any crocodiles in the crossing where we go. So we don't really have problems with that. We do hippos, we see hippos in the lakes and whatnot, but we don't go across the Mara River, which is the one that is full of. Sorry, a bit of windstorm coming through here. Um, so we don't really have that struggle. the areas where there's a bit of game in along the rivers, we just make sure we find a fairly shallow crossing to be able to do it safe. So we don't do the Mara River
Okay.
because that is up north in the Serengeti, and we don't have access to those areas. Maybe one day we will, but for the moment we don't. So the river crossings are more challenging in terms of if it's been raining heavily up on the escarpment, then even if it's dry where we are, you could come across a river and it's absolutely pumping. And sometimes we get across it, sometimes we have to actually wait and let the water settle a little bit. Otherwise, you might be a bit unlucky and the horses get washed away. Luckily, we haven't had that, but that would probably be the case if we were pushing our luck a little bit. Yeah.
Gotcha. But again, you're not on any you have the flexibility. So you could ride down a ways and find a better spot, or you like you say you can wait it out.
Yes, exactly. So we just have to. So then again, it's like depends a little bit. Again, that's weather depending. So if we see it raining up on the Ngorongoro Escarpment, then maybe that morning we have to we check up with the crew and we just make sure that we maybe stay on the the southern side or the eastern side of the river rather than going actually across it, because if we can't cross it, it means cars can't cross it either. So that works quite well. And amazingly so, we are not limited with the horses because they actually are your best 4x4 out there, better than any truck or any vehicle. So limitation actually comes more with the moving of the camp, with the vehicles, the trucks and everything, because on horseback, as you know, I'm sure, they are pretty good doers out there. And if they're well trained, like our horses are so used to wade through water, they know it all. And obviously my lead pony is always the lead, and if she goes ahead, the rest of her string behind her mates behind her will follow her through and trust her and trust me that it's a safe crossing.
Yeah. I love that. You got a good horse.
Yeah, you gotta have a good horse.
I love that.
You gotta be a brave one, because
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that you have a couple of kiddos. Do they go on these rides with you?
So my kiddos are still quite young. So I got a 1-year-old who literally just turned 1 while I was out on the last safari. So he's still very young. His name is Romeo. And then I have Joaquin, who is 4.5, turning 5 in June. So he rides with me. He did have a little bit of a fall at a young age. Nothing bad, but it set him back a little bit, sadly. Just a little naughty pony that sort of spun around, spooked a bit for Thompson Gazelle, and he was flown off, and she stepped all over him, so she was really naughty, that pony. So it set him back a little bit, but he does come out and ride with us out on safari. And what I just learned is that forget about the ponies, much better ride the safari ponies, because they're much better, much safer to ride. They don't spook. They're not, they're quite nice if you have to push them a little bit. So he does come riding, but I'm hoping maybe 2 years from now he could join. Maybe not a full safari, but at least half a safari, and sort of be my backup guide out there a little bit and assist his mother in the daily. But he would work then.
That's amazing.
So grooming, saddling, tacking, all of that to be his job rather.
So this is definitely going to be a family business that carries on.
Well, I would hope so, and obviously it would be a big sadness if the boys decided not to enjoy horses, because obviously, myself, including my fiance, we both are very horsey. We play a lot of polo. My fiance is a great polo player, so our life is surrounded by horses, and that's what we enjoy doing. But obviously, as a mother, we all know one mustn't push or force anything upon your children, because that could then actually have the opposite effect. So we try not to do that, and but obviously, very much hope so that they will take them our passion for horses on.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you only go with advanced riders. I guess for a guest watching, what do you consider an advanced rider? Like, do they have to be able to just really have a good seat in an English saddle at a gallop, or do they have to be able to jump like logs? What's the criteria?
So when we refer to an advanced, we normally say a fit advanced rider. So it's not about being able to perform a dressage test out in the bush. It's nothing about that really at all. But what you just mentioned there about seat, having a light seat, so being a good rider means that, because if you have a bad rider on these horses will not cope for a week carrying a person that is all over the show, not sitting balanced, not standing up in a canter, not having a light seat. tearing on their mouths. So reality, really,
Mm-hmm.
main thing there is actually that a bad rider on these ponies, they won't last. They will go down with saddle sores, they will go down with bad backs, they'll go down with mouth sores. So that's one very important
Yeah.
part of it. And for me, it would be highly not enjoyable if I had bad riders on a safari, because it wrecks the horses, and that's a no-go for us. Number
Yeah.
two is the terrain. So
Yeah.
you know, we encourage people to spread out. I hate when people have to sort of ride behind one another. It also doesn't create very nice horses, because they just follow one another and they don't get their own heads. I know safety reasons, a lot of safari operators
True.
prefer that because it's easier. No one is allowed to go ahead of the front runner. However, here is very different. So we always say that, you know, terrain allowing, spread out. Your horse can see where it's going, you can see where you're going, and, you know, for the terrain, it's easier to maneuver and ride that way. But it also
Yeah.
requires a good rider then, because obviously you really have to ride. You can't just follow. And for that reason, you need to
Yeah.
be able to, you know, keep an eye on the ground, keep an eye on the trees, keep an eye on the holes. Watch me as the guide. You know, if I try to communicate, get your attention, and you get your horse over there. If I tell people to please get out of
Mm-hmm.
here, we have a really bad charge from an elephant or something, that you need to be able to, in a controlled manner, because these things happen, it can become quite chaotic. So horses get a bit stressed, riders get a bit stressed, but you need to be able to then still control your pony out over uneven terrain, through the bushes, and yeah, those things are probably the most important. It's also the stamina, you know, to be out there, because many hours riding in the saddle, and if you don't have the muscle for it, you are quite quickly, you will go down on day 3 with a sore back. Sore backs is always a big problem for the riders. So there's a few
Yeah.
aspects to it, or what one should say. But yeah, bad riders, horses goes down, they can't carry that. If we have beautiful riders out there, it's amazing how everything just works much smoother. You know, the horses do incredibly well. They don't go down. The pace can be slightly faster because we have people riding them beautifully. And yeah, so it's more so
Yeah.
the challenges. And sometimes you can have safaris that runs absolutely perfect, that could have perfectly catered for an intermediate rider. But then you have another safari where there's certain challenges. And in terms of jumping, you know, if I say an advanced rider, you're never going to be asked to jump a 1 meter fence out here. But there could be a point where, you know, we're following narrow trails where there is no way around it, and a fallen and tree has been pushed over by an elephant, and we got to jump it. So I can't then
Yeah.
have a person
Yeah.
turning around saying, I can't jump. Then I say, well, then what do? Then we have to turn around. So small obstacles in the bush that we might not be aware of, but they can appear very sudden, and that's why the advanced riding comes handy. And to keep it safe out there, because the moment you have someone who is not good enough, they get nervous out there, they realize the terrain can be quite challenging, the pace can be quite challenging. You know, our horses are not lazy, they are forward going little safari machines, as we
Mm-hmm.
call them, and you need to be able to deal with that. You'll never get given a naughty pony at that. That's never going to be the case. But they have go, and they get stronger and stronger as the safari season continues. And you know, they want to get out there. And if there's a big herd of wildebeest coming across us, you know, we're gonna hopefully gallop with them. And you know, the moment you have someone falling back, then that becomes an issue, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess on that note, what do you do when you have somebody that's causing an issue for the whole group? Do you ask them to just do they get deleted from the ride and they have to hang out with the guys that are setting up camp?
It
What
depends
do
a
you
little
do?
bit. So we do a lot of, like, our riding questionnaire is very specific, so we really try to avoid that before people book their flights and actually come out to the Serengeti. Obviously, there is sometimes when people
Mhm.
are a little bit on the borderline. So then we will take one of our steady eddies that are the easiest rides out there, that make any rider sort of look quite good. And then often what happens is that they will sort of do a morning ride, and then they probably jump in the vehicle in the afternoon. And if I know it is a long moving day, and I
Mm.
know there's going to be a lot of maybe say fast canters, then I will say that today you're going to struggle, you're going to hold us back, so please do go in the vehicle. So obviously in a very polite, humble manner, but very often the person who comes and realizes also quite quickly that maybe signed up for a ride that he or she is not quite capable of. So they will very much listen to my advice, and understand that, because also themselves, they
Mhm.
don't feel great out there. They probably get quite nervous and they get tired, and whatnot. So we normally manage to
Yeah.
work around it. I have never so far had to turn anyone away because the riders are too bad. And I think that's because of, the communication prior to a ride, that if I see someone signing up and maybe I see a few sort of red flags in the riding questionnaire where I am a little bit uncertain whether they're capable or not, and then actually I'll have a phone call with them to try to work out, because sometimes it could just be a language barrier that, say a French guest just doesn't know the correct terms in English, and that way I can quite quickly tell whether
Yeah.
the person should be good enough or not. So normally we work that out before they actually book. So by the time they get here, we should have enough. We should have done enough research on the person to know and made them understand what the safaris is all about. So that helps a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely. No, that sounds awesome. Okay. So, I'm just thinking about myself. Like, this is a dream, like, to be able to join you one day. But when I was a teenager, as an example, I rode more than I walked, and nothing could unseat me, and I could ride bareback, and I could, I never got sore, right? You just ride, ride, ride. But there's been a several year gap in between the last time I've really ridden.
Yeah.
And so it's on one hand, it's like riding a bike, right? You remember a lot of your skill sets and your seat and your balance and all that. But on the other hand, you're out of shape. You don't have the muscle, your butt's going to get sore again, and and the confidence, because you're not riding constantly. So what would you recommend for someone like me, I guess specifically, who wants to end up on a ride with you but probably is not ready right now? Do you have other places in Africa that have easier rides that you would recommend that I go get a few under my belt and know where I'm at?
I mean, listening to your upbringing, riding bareback and all of that, your riding skills will be absolutely perfect. You would have done exactly what I would require someone to do or have done in their lives. Fitness might be against you, so to be able to enjoy the safari more without feeling, a bit achy in the morning, sore back, sore knees, sore hips, all the rest of it, then just, get some riding in before you would book. So if you have a riding school, or if you got a friend that
Okay.
has a horse, try to ride, say, 2 hours, 2 or 3 times a week, so that your body, muscle memory comes back. You get to sit in the saddle a
Yeah.
little bit, and maybe get shaved a little bit. So by the time you get here, you should be quite ready to go. And riding fit is obviously one thing, but even someone who's quite generally fit, who's an active person, should still be okay. Um, and the majority of people coming on our safaris is people that are in between, I say, 55 to 75 years old. Obviously,
Okay.
they have the time, they have the money. So we have a slightly older age group, and and they all cope really well. But saying that as well, there is always a vehicle. So even if you come into lunch on a moving day and you feel that you are knackered, because also out here, the weather, it gets hot. It could be really wet. It could be really hot. It could be super windy. So all of these elements could
Yeah.
tire you out there. So whenever we come into lunch, there is a vehicle there for those who feel that, what, I don't want to push myself too hard because I want to be able to, to be fresh to do another ride tomorrow. Then people hop into the car and they just
Hmm.
drive to camp in the vehicle, which is obviously beautiful as well. So that option is always there. We need to
Yeah.
have that because of also the age group that we deal with. And some people just don't have the
Yeah.
time to get riding fit before so far because maybe they just don't have access to horses or whatever it will be. But then again, just doing some cardio or doing some yoga or whatever it might be, obviously is going to be hugely beneficial when you finally come out there. But for yourself, Sarah, I mean, you will be perfectly fine because you were a girl riding little ponies and bareback and all the rest of it. So you have a seat, you have the head for it, you're ridden in terrain. So already there,
Yeah.
you're ticking all the boxes.
Yeah, I would think the only thing that I haven't done in the writing that you've described, the only thing I haven't done would be like I never galloped up to a log and jumped it at a gallop, but I did go exploring by myself, bareback on my horse out in the wilderness where no one would ever find me as like a 12-year-old, all by myself. And I got myself into all the kinds of situations where I had to like ride really steep hills down and go across lakes and up steep hills and and hop over down logs, but just not at like a gallop.
Yeah.
So,
So like
but
doing
other
at a
than that,
gallop,
I had
I think
quite a bit of riding experience.
even if it be a high jump. So for you to do a hop over a log will not be an issue whatsoever. Because I said it's not a 1 meter log, it could be half a meter
Okay.
log. The horse will do beautifully, so all you do is follow. So I quite often, for the specific reason, because if you tell all the guests that there's a little log up and coming, if you tell people, they start getting nerves, and that's the problem. So I just don't tell them. And then all of a sudden, everyone's like, oh, wow, I just jumped, because they have no time to stop. So it's not I'm going to lead you up to a meter jump. I lead you up to something
Oh,
that I know
gotcha.
is a super easy thing to jump. The horse will jump it for you. And all of a sudden, everyone had beautifully popped over it. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that was easy, you know? So you got to be a bit clever as a guy there as well. Because the moment you sort of
Yeah.
say, okay, we got to jump up and coming, you know, you got to get yourself ready, heels down on the rein, disaster. Just don't say anything.
That makes sense. Okay, I like that. Do you have a choice of saddles, or like, as an example, like an Australian saddle, they have the front pommels. Can a person ride in that kind of saddle, or does it have to be English?
No, so pretty much all our horses got their own saddles, and pretty much all our horses are in sort of general purpose English saddles. We just found that works the best for our rides. Like high pommel in the front is a bit tricky if you got a bit jumps involved, because that could actually hurt you. So so the horses comes with the saddle. We have 2 horses in barefoot saddles because it works better for their backs, but the rest are all sort of actually neck rein, but in English tack. So we have people
Okay.
saying
So
have
I definitely need to get.
don't do that.
Okay, gotcha. So, so to prepare for a ride, you'd need to be comfortable in an English saddle for sure. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. If you are, it will help
Where
you a
I,
lot.
yeah, again, bareback and English riding when I was young, but most of my adult life has been Western, just because of where I live. In the Northwest, most people ride Western up here. But yeah, no, that's good to know. And that's what I envisioned as well, English riding.
Yeah, for you,
Okay. So
you will be
what
good
is your, Mhm.
saddle riding before, because it is very, very different from Western.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay. I'll make sure to get my English seat back. So what is your favorite part of this lifestyle and the rides, and what is your probably least favorite part?
Gosh, tricky one. I think the entire picture, the entire vastness of it is what I very much love. Um, it's an incredible freedom doing what we do. It feels like you backtrack a
Mhm.
little bit in time when you are out here. You also pick areas with very little tourists, which is nice. I'm not saying we're avoiding all the other tourists, but we try to find the sort of more remote areas where there's less chance of bumping into other people.
Yeah.
Being on horseback, obviously, we don't have to follow roads, so we can go up the beaten path and really get into where the animals are without having to follow trails and deal with other vehicles and whatnot. I obviously love the horses.
Mhm.
I love the people. I love the nature. I love the Serengeti, the Endless Plains. It's just a surreal vastness out here that I think just captures everyone that comes here. I mean, I know we all talk about the
Mhm.
African bug, but there really is something very romantic about Africa, something very raw that I think is very difficult to get elsewhere in the world. Tanzania, again, in comparison to Kenya, love Kenya as well. It's home to me as well. Tanzania more so now, but it's a lot of wilderness still left to be explored in Tanzania,
Mhm.
and being able to do it, from the back of a horse when you actually, you're not sitting in the vehicle out here. And I do vehicles as well. I don't mind it, but I couldn't only do vehicles. But you are sitting on hopefully a very powerful horse that literally is you the brain for this horse, but the horse is your get
Yeah.
out. So when you get charged by something, whether it's a buff or an elephant, you're sitting on a horse that you have to rely on, but you need to tell it what to do. So it's everyone who rides horses,
Mhm.
they know that if you got a clever person on, then you can pretty much master anything out in the bush. So I think it's a beauty and a little bit of that feeling, living a little bit on the edge, because obviously I shouldn't say it's risky what we do. I think it's far more risky driving down the highway in the States or in France or wherever you
It's
are. But it's
unpredictable.
still unpredictable. So
Mhm.
and for me also a lot of the joy is to watch my horses. So after a full safari, you've done 8 days out there, and hopefully it's done well, and the horse has done incredibly well, and they're just getting stronger by the day on safari. They're getting fitter. They make me proud, and the reward I get from that is fantastic. So I guess the end of the day for me is very much about the horses and the horses' performance with the guests. If they carry their guests beautifully, they don't drop their guests, how they behave in front of encounters, they stand their ground to an elephant, they listen to me, they listen to their rider. I think that for me is a lot of the adrenaline. And then again, out here we are very opportunistic. So when you come across a beautiful journey of giraffes, you know the ground is pretty good, short grass plains. You just got to grab the moment, and you just got to open up along that journey of giraffes. And being out there with nobody but from horses and the plains and those giraffes, it's something quite special.
Magical, probably. Yeah, awe-inspiring. Makes you feel small and humbled.
Yeah, it's the rawness, I guess, out there,
I would
and
imagine,
the
anyways.
uncertainty, and every morning
Yeah,
waking up and not really knowing what the day has for you. But every day has its challenges in a good way.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So logistics again, back to camp. If you're riding for 8 days, is there a shower or do people just like bird bath it with a wet cloth?
No, so I think so we are camping, but I think one should really call it glamping, because everyone's got their own beautiful little tents with beds in there. There's mirror for you, there's drinking water in there, there's beautiful carpets, there's a little veranda, a chair, brass basin to wash your face in. Behind each
Wow.
tent is a long drop toilet with a wooden toilet seat, hot bucket shower. So it's we've got ice out here, we've got cold drinks out here, we have
Huh.
2 course lunches, we had 3 course dinners. So it's definitely a bit more
Wow.
so we're light enough to be able to move every second day, but too heavy to move on a daily basis, because then I would knacker the crew. So you got all your comforts out here.
Yeah.
You got hot water showers, you got cold drinks, you got tonics with ice, and you got beautiful, lovely, comfortable seats. We got a beautiful dining table. We got a big mess tent. So you got all your comforts, but just obviously tents being slightly smaller than if you were to be permanent setup sort of thing. So I think anyone that think camping, one
Um,
should maybe call it camping, maybe camping with style. So it's sort of out of African style a little bit. So we try to keep it
yeah.
authentic.
That sounds amazing. Absolutely amazing. And then are the evenings just spent like around a campfire and everyone's just enjoying conversation, or do you guys, is that's what I'm envisioning anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. So you come in the afternoon or in the evening, rather depending on how long the ride is. You can come in at 6 o'clock or maybe just before it gets dark, and then some people go straight for a hot shower. Other people come straight up to the big fire and they have a nice gin and tonic. We watch the sunset. We hear the hyenas whoop or the lions roar or the grunting of the wildebeest. So everyone sort of gets into their routine. Some people go straight to the shower and come back to the campfire beautifully dressed for the dining. Other people quite happy to sit there a little bit dirty and dusty and enjoy the cold sound diner before they go for a shower. So it's different from every safari, but yeah, campfire is obviously always there. Hopefully, if it's a clear sky, the stars comes out. Sunset's obviously out here. That golden hour is very hard to beat. And pretty much if there's no moon or anything, you get incredible. Like last night, the Milky Way was just out and about, just incredibly clear. No clouds on the sky, no moon on the sky.
Oh,
So
wow.
so that is sort of the romantic touch, and obviously with very little light pollution inside in most of our camps. So maybe you can see a light or two somewhere off in the distance, but pretty much nothing. So it's very raw out there, very wild for that reason. And I think that is becoming quite
Mhm.
special these days as the population across the
Yeah.
continent is growing rapidly, as we all know. So we try to keep it as authentic as we can. Obviously, nothing will be
Yeah.
perfect, but we try to really find trails and routes where we can really go off the beaten path as much as we can to keep the guest happy. And so far, we manage really well. And but yeah, everything is changing, as we all know. But we will keep pushing at it.
Yeah, gotcha. And what is a typical size group that you take out?
So we do quite a lot of private safaris as well, and then we can take up to 12 people in the group. We could take one person privately as well, but obviously then the price will change accordingly. And then we can take up to 12 if it's private. In our set departure, so the safari we're running for the moment is a set departure, which means anyone can join. Then it's a minimum of 4 people and a maximum of 10 people.
Okay. Okay. And they don't need to necessarily book together. Like, three people can book, and then another three that don't know each other, and you just wait until it's fully booked, and then you go.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to have 4 people to confirm the departure, and
Okay.
then that 4 people can confirm the safari departure, and then we can fill it up to 10 people. So, for example, here on this safari, as it is set as a
Okay.
set departure, we've got 2 people actually from 2 people from 3 people from England and 3 French, and 1 Iranian guy, and 1 lady from North Carolina. So it's a lovely mixed group of different
Mm,
nationalities. But common ground is that they are all
nice.
advanced
And how
level.
do you
That's all.
Right. Right. I'll love horses. Yes. And how do you do your marketing for your business, or is it pretty much just spread from word of mouth?
So word of mouth works really well. Obviously, now being in the being that Kaskazi has been around for quite a few years, that definitely helps. But I normally go and visit offices or the agents. I do a little presentation. I introduce what we do. We have some photos. We can show some videos. And I also go to badminton every year in England, where we have a stand. So we obviously invite all the riders because the British, we have a lot of people coming from the UK, so it's a big target, a big market for us.
Mhm.
So we go to badminton, which is the biggest horse trial, or one of the biggest horse trial events. So that's a very good one. And then after that, normally I rent a car and I do a little Europe tour and go to the agents that we work with, and maybe there's some new agents that have started that like to come and get a presentation done, so they get to have a face with a name, which always helps. And US slightly different because US there isn't many agents actually, so I don't go US too often, but I try to do it maybe every third or fourth year. Now because of COVID and all of that, it's been a bit less of that, so I am long due to go to the US for a bit of marketing. But then really how it worked that we have guests that obviously came on safari, loved it, became good friends, and by the end of it, we stay in contact, and they put together maybe a little cocktail
Mhm.
party or a drink party, and they invite potential guests that would like to go on a safari. And again, I do a little speech, we talk, we do maybe show a little bit of videos, and yeah, so that's mainly how we do it in the US. So very different from the European market actually. And then
Very cool.
obviously with
Okay.
social
Um,
media,
mhm.
Instagram, Facebook, all of that, as we know, is very, very important these days because a lot of people do use that.
Yes. How far out are you booked, typically? Like, if a person wants to go right away, do they have a wait list for, like, they have to wait a year?
Now, I think if you generally book, I would say it all changes a little bit since COVID, but I would say if you book 6 months in advance, you should be almost guaranteed a space, unless it's maybe peak time, then that obviously books
Okay.
out quicker. But generally speaking, I would say 6 months is what people normally
Okay.
do these days. It used to be more far in advance before COVID because I think people were the world was a little bit more less tricky. But now what I see is 6 months is generally when people like to confirm their safari date.
Okay. And how many, trips per year do you do?
So we have 2 seasons mainly. So the Serengeti we only run January, February, March because that's when the wildebeest migration come through the area where we ride. And out here, if we have a good season, like with enough rides, we can do 6 rides during those. So literally 2 a month
Okay.
without knackering the ponies because that's the most important. And then our
Yeah.
Kilimanjaro Elephant Ride, which is a very popular ride as well, we run June, July, August, September. So during 4 months, and there we can pretty much squeeze in 8. So eight plus 6 makes 14, I guess. Um, so yeah, so we run between
Wow.
12 to 14 rides a year, but that's on a good year. So obviously now with COVID, it was a bit of a disaster. We had obviously a lot less because the world couldn't travel. But this year is looking
Yeah.
good. Out here, we've had 6 groups out here this year, so that's been fantastic. And then next season is booking up as we speak.
Wow, that's so cool. Okay, perfect. Well, I feel like I have taken up plenty of your time. But you've given me so much information, and for the people watching as well. How what is your preferred way for people to reach out, to contact you, and learn more about this and to book?
I mean, I would just say go onto the website or onto our Instagram and DM us, send us an email, or DM us on Instagram. You know, text us and let us know what you're interested in and what you like to do. And we're obviously very happy to pick up the phone and talk you through it. You know, more on a personal basis, because some people find it a bit scary to book a riding trip to Africa. And hopefully, by talking to one of our veterans out here, we could ease their mind a little bit to convince them that we know what we're doing. So yeah, that would be the best way, really. And then obviously, if they have already a travel agency, like a horse riding holiday agency, then if they have um, a good communication with them, then reach out to them and see if they do sell Kaskazi horse safaris, and they can book through them as well. So anything is possible, really, as long as they either book with us directly. But it's good that they use a horse riding holiday agency if they were to book, because they obviously know the drill, and to make sure that people are good enough riders and all of that. Because sometimes if you get a booking from an agency that sells
Got
maybe
it.
just general safaris, then it's a bit more tricky, because those people themselves might not know horses, and that sometimes can cause a little bit of problem, not really knowing the horse safari world and industry and the do's and the don'ts.
Yeah, gotcha. No, I will definitely get myself in shape, and I'll come join you in person.
Well, that would be
Sounds
fantastic. So
amazing.
you've got the full
Um,
screen now. So no, it would be lovely to see you out here in the bush, or whether it's in the Serengeti or on the foothills of Kilimanjaro. But get some riding hours in and get an English saddle and neck rein, which you do anyway if you ride Western, and then you
yeah,
should be
yeah.
pretty damn good to go, I'm sure.
Sounds good. All right. Well, can you think of anything that I didn't ask you, or anything that you just would like to say before we wrap it up?
I mean, I don't think so. I think you pretty much covered it all, to be honest.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, no, I think you got it, Sarah. I think you asked all the very essential questions that summarize the safari out here.
Okay. All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, and for just telling us this amazing, painting this amazing journey for us. And yeah, we cannot wait. I'm speaking for other people that love horses. Cannot wait to come ride with you. And I'm going to be spreading the word like crazy. So thank you very
Fantastic.
much, Joe, for your time.
It's just,
Okay. Good. Okay.
mm,
Well, we will be talking more then.
yes, I hope so.
I'm
Look
really
forward to
excited.
it.
Thank you for painting this as a reality for me, because literally I've like dreamt about it for a decade now, and here I am talking to you, and you're living the life. It's just amazing.
Well, it's definitely live from safari. It couldn't be more real.
I love it. Well, thank you again. I will let you get your day going, and it's midnight for me, and I got to
Oh
get up at
gosh.
4:30. So I got to
Okay.
get up in
I'm
4 hours
sorry
for
about
work.
that. Well, thank you,
So
Sarah, and yeah,
I
we'll stay in contact. And I look
no,
forward
no,
to
I'm
see
grateful.
the channel.
Sounds wonderful. I'll send it to you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Be
Thank
safe.
you, and yeah, good night, I guess.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye bye.